For me, what it came down to was ending this cycle where I was still trying to get my parents to really see me. She's coming from a place of love, but that doesn't mean that I actually have to entertain any of those thoughts. You're listening to the Soul Whispers podcast. This is your guide to break out of your fears, follow the path that lights you up, and come home to yourself. I'm your host, certified life coach and soul whisperer, Jen Sway. Before we begin, know that wherever you are in your journey, you can trust yourself. You're being divinely guided, and your life is meaningful. Now, let's start the show. Hello, friends, and welcome back to the Soul Whispers podcast. It's Jen, and if you're new here, welcome. And if you're a returning listener, thank you so much for being here again and joining me for another soul-nourishing episode. We are on episode 99 of the podcast. We're almost there to 100. And what a moment. I've been podcasting now for a few years, and it's just been such an exciting experience. And now, I am experimenting a little bit more with video podcasts, and it's a journey. I'm still learning to see if I enjoy this format or not. I feel like it is a lot of editing, but at the same time, it's nice, and you guys get to see more of Cleo because obviously I cannot do a video or anything without her coming on to me. But you know what? I'm into it. I love her so much. She is my emotional support animal, and she will always have a place wherever I am. And she loves you guys. That is also why she's here. If you've ever worked with me one-on-one and done a session, then you know that when we're on a call, she always will jump up onto my lap and be there for you. So anyways, with this special episode of number 99, which in numerology 9 signals the number of completion. It is the ending of a cycle, tying up loose ends, and starting to get ready for transition. But with the 9 energy, there's a little bit of the reflection of the past. There is the letting go of whatever has happened in the past, and really being okay, I am upgrading now. I have completed this next level of my life, and I'm ready for the new. But it's not you're in the transition of change yet. It is just you're ending something, you're letting things go, you're releasing, and that will allow you to come on to the next chapter. And as I come into my birthday next month as well, I've been reflecting a lot about my growth, about just how things feel so different now in life, the way that I move through the world, the perspectives I hold, and also kind of the yo-yoing that I've done, where I've kind of talked about this in the past, where I feel with change, whenever you're doing this deconditioning work, where you're peeling away the layers of conditioning that you've gotten from society of how you should be or what you should do, what's good or bad. And especially with parents, growing up and moving away from their paradigms of thinking, their wishes for you, you tend to go swing to the other side. I saw this with myself, whether it was with purpose in school or with dating. Even things different perspectives on politics or what is right or wrong, good or bad. I definitely saw myself go into really strongly from one camp to the other camp, and then finding this confusion where I was neither really resonate with me anymore, but I don't really know who I am outside of just this one thing, that black or white thinking, and really needing to stretch myself to make space for nuance, for paradoxes, and to hold that with so much compassion and grace, where I was able to not just judge others less, but judge myself less, right? And that's really where so much change happened, when I really started to connect with the idea that we are all this one energy, that we all have the same human experience, that overall we are all mostly the same, and maybe just our skin is different, our skin color is different, maybe our ethnicity is different, maybe we grew up in different places, but overall the human experience is so similar. And from that lens, being able to empathize with people going through different challenges, being able to empathize with people's really strong reactions, especially looking at my relationship with my parents and my relationship with my mom, just being able to meet her kind of more where she's at, and also be able to meet myself where I was at in different points in my healing journey, different points of my ability to tolerate things for myself, for her, for the family. And so I wanted to go deeper into that today, especially, and reflect on some of the cycles that I've completed, things that I am now letting go of, and really just releasing all of these stories, shedding all the skin to allow myself to feel like renewed again. And that's really like the energy that I've started this year with. That was so great at the end of last year, when I hosted the Soul Whispers retreat in Joshua Tree. Like, I feel like I got so much out of that for myself, and just from hosting that space, from being around my client, like being able to really go deep with her and be able to see that change, like it rejuvenated me to even just do that work and to be there. And another big part of why that was because I had hosted my family for Christmas for the first time ever in LA, where all six of us, like me, my mom, my dad, my sister, and her two girls, like that are 5 and 4 years old, like all of us just like crammed into my 1 bedroom apartment with my two cats as well that like hid the entire time. And it was a really fulfilling experience. So it is also definitely without its challenges. However, they were so different this time around than any other year in the past. And I really want to share with you like some of my insights and my growth edges there, because I've talked about my relationship with my mom and kind of like the tension that's always been there between us, the kind of healing from verbal and emotional abuse, the wanting to love her fully and wanting to have a really great, healthy relationship with her, but just feeling like I wasn't in the place to do so. Like neither of us really was. I think that's kind of shifted throughout time. And especially now, like I just realized that every single time that I've seen my mom since I've started doing more of this deeper healing and going and like really growing myself spiritually, emotionally, intellectually, going down this path of like healing my shadow sides, being able to tend to my inner child, knowing what it is that I need, reflecting on my relationships with other people, especially romantically and friendships, healing my relationship with things like money and with my body and health, like all of these things, right, that are so rooted, like so many of these challenges are rooted in things that we experience as children. And for me, like growing up with parents who had very different mentalities than I do now, every time that I've seen my mom and like been around her so far over the last few years, I learned something new. I gained so much insight. I'm able to release so many things because I notice her patterns after seeing it within myself, right? I created like so much awareness in things like my negative self-talk, like how easy it was for me to just go to straight criticism whenever things didn't work out, like my fear of failures, like my fear that like everything's going to go wrong, or that I'm wasting time, wasting money, that I need to be hyper productive, that there's always something I can do. And as long as I'm doing, then like maybe I'm safer because at least I'm trying, versus like my relationship with rest and just not being able to like take a chill pill for like so long, which has shifted a lot over the last few years, and like finally be able to come into like rest and peace and joy and like just tranquility in my life and really prioritize that and feel good in that. Like everything from my anxious attachment style, like all these things have shifted because when I go see my mom now, or when we spend time together, like I see these tendencies play out in her, and I can so easily just be like, oh, that's hers, that's not mine, let me give it back, right? Let me give her models back, like her thought models back. Let me give her these emotions back. Let me give her these judgments back, because they're not mine, they were never mine. And intellectually, I have known that for like years, right? Ever since I was like in therapy when I was 18, like at USC, where I was just like at rock bottom. Like I knew all these things intellectually, right? And then over the years, gained more awareness around the patterns, was able to have the language to be able to communicate these things, to label these things within myself, to be able to notice these patterns of feelings and of thoughts and of behaviors. And I would just try to start walking into a new way of being, a new way of thinking, without fully being able to like give it back to like my mom, for example, without feeling like I'm also blaming her. And that, my friends, is one of the biggest cycles that I'm completing this year, that I am giving back, is the cycle of blame. It was so easy for me to end up blaming my mom for all of these things that were going wrong in my life, like quote wrong in my life, where it was like my feeling of inadequacy because my business wasn't where I wanted to be. It wasn't making enough money to like fully support myself. Like it was so easy for me to go back to like, well, it's because my mom had put all this pressure on me and I have all these like, I have to hold all this pressure and I have to work through all these things. Like every time she would say something about my business, it would trigger me. Anytime that she would criticize me, like it would just put me into such a like a nervous system shell shock that it would take me literally days, like if not weeks, to recover from. And when we went to Europe over the summer this last year, we spent about a week or so, maybe a week and a half together in Paris and Geneva, traveling around, just the two of us. And it took me literally 2 weeks after I got back from that trip alone in my new apartment where I was moving in and all this stuff. It took me 2 weeks to regulate myself again, where I was waking up every single day extremely stressed, extremely like hyper vigilant about like time. I was like counting down the days, counting down the hours, and like, trying to do my best to get my apartment settled because I had just moved in literally like the day after I flew back from Europe. I just moved into my new apartment, had all these boxes, all these things that I needed to unpack. I had my two cats. One of my cats was having like health issues also. I was like, oh my gosh, like I need to really like utilize my time well here. I need to like ground into the space. I wanted to build community in Santa Monica. I wanted to like, just start posting all this content, but I was just such in a like a fight or flight response, right? Where it was just like this nervousness and this like hypervigilance that was running it, not from a place of grounded stability of knowing myself, knowing what I was here to do, and then wanting to create from that place. And during that time, I was reflecting a lot on the things that my mom had said. And I remember being in Europe where she would say things about my business, say things about money, say things about, career and all this stuff where I was doing my best to not take it personally, right? And actually come at it from a place where, okay, like she is just trying to help, right? Like I know that to be true. I've known that to be true like my entire life, that not my entire life, but like ever since I started to really like go on this journey to healing, was that I know that my mom loves me very much, like very deeply. She loves our entire family. Okay, I know that for her, like being an immigrant to be here in America, like they started with nothing here. And for her to be so like hyper vigilant about money, about safety, about relationships and trust, and like not being able to trust people, not saying like things like you can't trust other people, you can't trust like anybody outside the family. These are all things that kind of ingrained this feeling of just not ever feeling safe, not ever feeling secure, not ever having enough, being enough, and needing to be really like on edge about my surroundings. So when I was in Europe with her, I was starting to notice like, okay, all these patterns that I saw within myself that I had already started healing, like how much of it was just hers. I saw like how a lot of the criticisms, a lot of the ways that she thought was actually coming from a place of like people pleasing, of anxiety, right? And like having an anxious attachment style, honestly, kind of like disorganized, to be honest. Like she definitely swings like anxious and avoidant, where she's just very like, oh, like you say like one thing that makes her feel like she doesn't want, like you don't want her around, she's just like, I don't want to go. And that's kind of what happened in Joshua Tree with my retreat, was that my entire family was coming with me. And then like in the morning I woke up in such a bad mood, and my sister was like, so like what time are we leaving, or like do you want us to be there tonight? And I was just like, honestly at this point I don't even care, because I was just so tired. I like literally just was not getting good sleep at all. I slept on the couch the entire week. Like I was just, and I like had no peace and quiet, it felt like, because people were waking up earlier than me, like everyone, like it was a whole thing. Okay, like I will spare you the details, but essentially I was just waking up on the wrong side of the bed every single day. And I like was able to regulate myself pretty decently throughout that week, but in the mornings it was definitely like I was just like tired, a little overwhelmed, and just like very grateful for everyone to be there, but at the same time like, oh my gosh, I just need my space. So I said this one little comment, and my mom was just like, I'm not going. Like I don't want to go, like you guys can go, but like I'm not gonna go, I'm not gonna be a bother to anybody. And that's where I like realized so many thoughts that I have had about myself that was like, I felt like a burden to my parents growing up. I felt like a burden to them like throughout my entire adult life, pretty much. Noticing these patterns like that was just like, oh, this is so much of her, right? That's the avoidant piece coming out of disorganized attachment. And then when we were in Europe, for example, we went to the Eiffel Tower because my mom really wanted to go see it. And I mean, you're in Paris, like you need to go to the Eiffel Tower, at least take a photo there just to like prove that you're there, right? She wanted to go up on the tower, like she wanted to go all the way up. We had been in Europe before as a family when I was like younger, when I was in elementary school, but we never went up to the top of the tower. And she was telling me how like last time we had been here, we were just so young, so like they didn't want to take us up, and we didn't really have the time to and stuff. So this time she really wanted to go up, and I was just like, I really don't want to, but at the same time, like I wanted to be able to give my mom a good experience. Like she's never does anything for herself, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna put aside like what I want to help meet her desire, because I want her to be happy. I wanted her to have a good trip. And she could see that I was like really resistant, that I was kind of like, because we had like other plans of like going to the gardens and all the stuff. And she's like, oh, it's fine, like we don't have to go. Like, no, it's okay. Like, the line's like too long anyways. Like, it's okay. And I was like, no, like let's go. Like, we ended up compromising, being like, okay, we'll come back tomorrow, and we'll do the thing. And so we did. But it was like in moments like that where again I was like seeing how she was really just responding to me, and that anxiety piece coming up of not wanting to be a burden, of not really wanting to say that she wanted something, like not really being able to communicate that to the point where she's just like, yeah, this is what I want to do, let's do it, like can we do this, but kind of having to subtly put her needs in, put her desires in, and just kind of hope that the other person responds to it. And again, another cycle that I've seen in myself, just right there. I healed it, right? Like it was just like, this is not me. This was her. This is something that I learned by observation growing up, and by, society does the same thing to women all the time, of like showing us to people please, to be like anxious about how somebody responds and like not be too much, right? And I had so much empathy for her in that moment. I had so much like compassion of just like, like any irritation that I had about me not wanting to do something touristy just like dissipated, because I was just like, oh my gosh, like I feel like I was just holding her inner child at that point, and was like, really wanting to love on it. And don't get me wrong, like we had our challenges throughout that time too, and like, but even just like noticing the way that my body was responding around her, it was like all the stuff that I'm like, okay, I see this pattern. I see, like, I just get it, Like, if you get it, you get it. If you don't, you don't. But, like, I was just in that place of, like, I see. Okay. Like, I see, and I release now. Like, I can just let this go. This is just so not me. And I will say, like, one of the things that really helped me get out of that funk the 2 weeks after that trip was I was talking to a good friend of mine, and he was, really just like holding space for what I was going through emotionally. I was telling him about these things that my mom had said to me that really got under my skin, that was making me really emotional, really like anxious, on just feeling like inadequate and all the things. And he was just like, literally, none of that matters. She doesn't know anything about you. She doesn't know like what you're going through. She doesn't even know what you do for a living. Like she doesn't get a say in this. And kind of like just giving me this like tough love moment that I love, right? Really calling me out on how I could get to be responsible for what I do and own my truth strong enough. Really what the heart of it was me being able to be so grounded and certain in myself, in my truth of my why, that it doesn't matter how strong anybody else's truth is for them about their perception of me. It's their perception of me, right? It's their projection of me. It's not me. It's a projection that they have of me. But that's not me, because what I am, right, is my truth, my feelings of it, my thoughts around it. Like that is the expression of me, right, that I care about. So when it came to like, later on in the year, as I was like moving through my business and all this stuff, like being able to notice like where I felt such a pull to go back to, well, it's because of this cycle of people pleasing. It's because of this cycle of anxiety. It's because of this cycle of generational trauma. It's because of blah, 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 blah. What would it really look like for me to just let go of all those stories, right? Even the person of me, like the version of me as I look at my journey, where starting off, right, just unconscious, that's kind of where we all kind of start this personal development, self-growth journey, the spiritual journey, is that we're just not conscious. We're not conscious of really like what's running our programs, what's running our brains, what's underneath the surface, the shadows, right? The pains, the wounds that we haven't healed yet. And so we're just kind of operating. We're just like, we have to go to school, we have to get good grades, we have to do this and this and this, and this is what we should do, this is what's good to do. Like, in these situations, this is good, this is bad, this is where we judge others, this is where we judge ourselves, this is where we feel guilty, where we feel shame, right? Like that's literally what it feels like to be in this unconscious space, is where our operating on autopilot. And then as we ascend, right, it's like that first spiritual awakening that's basically like either a breakdown, like a mental breakdown that's just like, I just can't freaking do this anymore. Like, I'm so sick and tired of life. Like, I'm so like, like I just can't do it anymore, right? Maybe it's a relationship ending. Maybe it's you getting laid off in a job. Maybe it's you just being like, I just cannot go into work anymore, right? Like for me, this was like with school and with mental health. Like I was just at this tipping point where all I could think about the entire day was killing myself. um, like it was so bad. Like I was literally walking on campus every single day for months, just thinking about like just having like life-ending thoughts run loop through my brain. And I will go way more in depth into this and like coming out of that and my perspectives on it now, in a future video. But for me, that's like honestly kind of what it took. Like I ended up being hospitalized for a few days, to be able to stabilize my mood, where I like didn't have contact with the outside world, didn't have my phone, didn't have an internet, didn't have like books to read, didn't have like anything really. And I just had to sit with myself, which was so freaking uncomfortable. And within that first like day, I was just like, this is just not for me. Like this is not the place I'm supposed to be right now. Like something seriously is off and wrong for me to be here. And I also felt like a fire come back to me, because before that I was so like disconnected. I felt so disconnected from myself, from life, that I lost touch with my emotions, honestly. Like I feel like the only emotions I could ever really feel was like stress and anger and like depression. Yeah, like that was it. So I felt this fire that got lit up from a sacred anger, right? Not just a reactionary anger, but from the sacred anger of like, why is this the way that the system is? Like, why is this the way that we treat people with mental health challenges? Like, why am I being fed this like freaking boiled Gardein chicken and like steamed vegetables? Like, do they really think that if you're in a bad place emotionally and mentally, that by giving you this like shit food that you're gonna be able to heal? Like, I was so mad. I was like, we need to change the entire like food system for like health patients, like mental health patients, physical health patients. Like, this is just not okay. Like, what is this like crap hospital food that's just gonna make you even more sick and more depressed? Like, I was angry. Okay, but here's the thing, that was me completing this like cycle of just allowing things to happen to me, allowing life to happen to me, of just being that kind of like victim that I didn't really see that I was at that time. It was like me ascending my consciousness to look down and like look at the bird's eye view of what was going on, and finally like take ownership about like where I was and what I wanted, right? I finally was able to reflect on like not just being worried about how can I fulfill other people's needs, desires, visions for me? How can I like best go after this thing that other people told me I should want? And I really looked at, who am I? What do I want? How do I feel? And if like I don't know what I want, well, at least I know what I don't want. So like let me stop doing that at least. Right? Let me literally just like start saying no to things and say, fuck it. Like I'm not gonna stay up all night to study for some exam. I wanna sleep. I'm burned out. And so when I talk about completing these cycles and how like we kind of continue ascending up these journeys, right? And we complete old cycles, we create more awareness around certain patterns that we have, certain thoughts, certain habits, and ways of being, our desires that we have and where they come from and why they're there. We're able to shed and let go of whatever that conditioning was, and then allow in the new to just kind of flow into us, right? We don't have to necessarily figure out exactly what it is that we want and like how it's going to come through, but we root into like what is it that we want to feel, why we want to feel it, why that's important to us, and then naturally like we get to be shown the things that we need to let go of in order to do that. And so to like bring it back to this example with my business and how it related to like my relationship with my mom, just so many things, so many cycles of the way that I talked about myself, the feelings that I had, the stories I was telling myself, like even this like running thought of like whenever my business was like not making money, there would be this like inevitable anxiety of should I get a job, right? And then it doesn't help that my mom on the sidelines here is just like yapping away, being like, you should get a job, like telling me to like get literally like any job, like talk about how important healthcare is, and just like all of her like scarcity thoughts and whatever. Like me being able to like actually recognize those things as like her thoughts, her BS, and like not put weight into it, because there was the piece of me that was just like, oh my god, like maybe she's right, and like, you know, I know that she's just trying to help, and I know that she loves me, and so like maybe she's right, you know, maybe I should do this, maybe I should try something different. And it was like so much of the when am I going to just like trust myself that I know what I'm doing, that like I'm okay, that this is all going to work out, and to push aside like her fears, her worries, and really transmute those things as it's not that she doesn't believe in me. And this is another cycle that like I'm completed, right? Which is I had this belief that like whenever she would criticize me, whenever she would bring up these things like go get a job or whatever, I would see that as she doesn't believe in me, that she doesn't understand me, that she really truly thinks that like I can't do this and that this is not a safe thing. And I was able to transmute that into seeing that as she's coming from a place of love, but that doesn't mean that I actually have to entertain any of those thoughts. And what really helped me here was something that one of my coaches and mentors have said, which is that the people who love you fear for you. Okay. And that is also one of the biggest powers of having somebody who's an outside party, who's a coach or a therapist or mentor or something, is that when somebody truly believes in you, in your potential, in your light, in your ability to like really get through things, right? Not treat you like a victim, not like have fear that you're going to end up on the streets with like no money, no clothes, no like, you know, support, whatever. When you have that type of energy of somebody who sees you in your highest light, that it's like a no-brainer. It's just like, of course you're going to be able to figure it out. Of course you're going to be fine. Of course this is going to work, because they believe in your ability. But those who really love you, who want to protect you, who really want to care about your safety and your survival, all this stuff, they're going to have fear. They're going to have fear when they see you taking risks. They're going to have fear when they see you going outside of what society thinks is normal. They're going to fear for you whenever you are doing something that they've never done before, that they don't see works. And especially for someone who is like my mom, who is an immigrant from China, who is not an entrepreneur, but my dad is, right? Who saw like him go through all these journeys too. Like for her to have so much fear for me and just want me to be like safe, secure, and stable, like that was such a freeing, releasing thought of, it's not just like she has these thoughts and I just like entertain them. It's that this is all just coming from a place of love, actually believing it and integrating it in, that I don't have to like let those thoughts like come into me at all. Instead, like it's like I have a filter now where those thoughts come in, right? She like expresses these things to me. It filters out like all the particles of like negativity, of judgment, of criticism in her tone and like whatever else are her fears. And all I like in that filter, it's like it transmutes. It's just transformed. It's alchemized into love. And that's what I allow in. I just allow in the love from what she puts out. And no matter how it comes out of her mouth, right? It's just going to be received as love for me. Like that's what I've decided for myself. And that, my friends, like I cannot tell you how freeing that cycle being completed is. It's just like, it's incredible. And again, this is not to say that I'm like perfect at this and that like I never get triggered anymore, but this is something that I noticed for myself this last time that all my family was here, was that I felt so empowered to be able to do that while feeling triggered. And I think it is so, so, so important on our healing journeys to be able to intentionally trigger ourselves, right? And really choose our triggers, because that is how we know that we're healed. That is how we know that we have built up more capacity. That is how we know that we've expanded beyond. That is how we know that we've truly grown, is when we can be triggered and not have the same reaction that we did, you know, before we were conscious, but actually be able to come from a responsive place and be responsible, right? The ability to respond to that situation, because now we have had the tools. Now we have the practice, right? You can't practice if you're never being triggered. right? Like try growing in a romantic relationship without being in a romantic relationship. Right? Try healing your anxious attachment style on your own in a vacuum by yourself. You can't. You need to go out there and meet people. You need to like be able to communicate. You need to be able to get to those places where you feel that tightness in your chest and like that worry and anxiety of like, ooh, if I bring this up to them, like, are they gonna not like me anymore? Are they not gonna like, what are they gonna think about me? Blah blah blah. Like, you need to be in those situations and practice like using that awareness, because you know what the pattern is, you know how to actually respond to it, how you want to respond to it, what your higher self would do in that time, right? How the most healed version of you who has like a secure attachment style, how would they respond to it? And it doesn't mean that you never get triggered, right? It's like, okay, now you're triggered and you see how it used to be, and you're intentionally selecting a different route, right? You're intentionally being like, I'm actually gonna go with this option today. And then you do the thing and you see that everything's gonna be okay, right? And you see how it plays out, and you're like, oh shit, like that actually felt good. I didn't die, right? And that like I didn't die, I survived, I'm okay, I'm safe, is exactly what your nervous system needs in order to continue healing, growing, completing these cycles of trauma, cycles of negative habits, cycles of negative thoughts and then criticism, all judgments, the whole shebang. Okay. Another cycle that I completed over the holidays last year was ending this cycle that thinking my parents don't understand me, right? That they don't see me. And the way that this comes through is not that like now I think that they fully understand me, that they get me, that like my mom fully accepts me and all this stuff. Like that's not where I've gone with it. And I think this is one of those cycles where it's like me just completing it but not really knowing like how it's going to continue transpiring in. Like I'm in that right now. But what happened is I made the conscious decision before my family arrived, Christmas Eve, where I was really excited to know that they were all coming here, because I'm always the one who's traveling to them, right? I was almost the one who was going to Michigan to go be with my parents or going to my sisters. And I always go to my sisters for Thanksgiving. And typically my family meets there. But this year, my parents weren't able to come to Thanksgiving. So it was just me and her. And that was really great. But thinking about our whole family being there, like that's always where I've been so triggered, so anxious, like the years prior. And I think part of it is not being in an environment where I feel like I can be myself, right? I'm in somebody else's home. I'm like, I don't know like where the area is like. I just, unless I'm like back home, like my hometown, but then at that point it's just like I feel like I'm back in high school sometimes. So my point being, this time around when everybody decided that they were going to come to LA for me, that made me feel so confident and so grounded in like, okay, this is like my turf. Like it's very much so like a football game where it's just like, all right, the home team, like home turf, like let's go, I can do this. Because here I'm like, okay, I have my friends that I know I can like get support from, that I know like I can go to, that I can talk to. I know the area, I have my car with me, like I can drive us places, I can go somewhere. I like know, I just like feel more at home. Like I curated my home to feel like a home, right? To feel more comfortable. And it just gives me so much more safety and security than like being in my childhood bedroom or being in a guest bedroom at my sister's. So because of that, I decided that like I was going to show up as Jen, who just exists here in LA, like adult Jen. And kind of this idea of looking at me as a child, or like me as their kid, me as like somebody who's living in their home, like that dissipated. And I was able to kind of step into like, no, like they're coming in as guests to be here with me. And we are all a family, we're all sharing the space. But I can hold my own, I can hold my ground, right? I can be confident in me in the way that I show up. So I decided ahead of time that I was going to show up more authentically as just me. And I also decided that I was going to let them into my life a little bit more. Let them into these parts of my life that really like I cherish, that I really value, that feel like natural extensions of me. And for me, that was bringing them to Tea at Shiloh, which is this beautiful tea house in downtown LA that I have a tarot residency at. Like I go weekly or twice a week to read tarot for people. And that has been like such a soul nourishing space for me, and such an incredible opportunity for me to like meet people and do my soul's work. And I really wanted to share that with my family, to let them into and like actually let them see what I'm doing. They don't get to just see what I'm doing. Like I'm not sending them my podcast episodes and my YouTube videos and all this stuff. And so they haven't gotten like too much insight into what it actually looks like for me to be in my work, to be in that journey. So I have booked a reservation for all of us to go to Tia Shala to go see this space so they could really like understand more about me and like the vibe that I bring, my energy. And I also decided that it was okay for them to come to Joshua Tree with me. And like they were originally going to get like their own space, but ended up happening in a way that like they were able to actually come in to the space that I had booked for the retreat. They were able to meet my client who had come as well, which was really cool. And in doing all of this, that was me basically saying like I am so much more mature now, where it's not about like I don't care about what my parents think, right? Especially as like children of immigrants, children of like Asian parents, or like anything where you've received a lot of support from your family. I think there is this like challenge of, you don't want to live for your parents, you don't want to have to go for like everything that they wanted you to do, but then at the same time you feel guilty or you feel like kind of anxious doing your own thing because you're also looking for validation because they gave so much. Like it's this weird guilt trippy vibe that exists, and it doesn't work to go with this very Western mentality of like, just don't care about what anyone thinks. And like, who cares about what your parents think? Like, you're not a child anymore. I understand that perspective. And I think there's a time and place for it. But at the end of the day, like for me, what it came down to was ending this cycle where I was still trying to get my parents to really see me, right? To be able to see me as like the successful person or somebody who was doing good work or like doing something really valuable in this world. And I was rooted already like into, I know for myself that this is really valuable. I know for myself I'm successful. I have all these stories of people that I've helped and like, their testimonials of working with me. Like I get the value of, I've seen it. I've seen the transformation. I've seen what I can do. And this is just going to continue compounding. So because I was able to be grounded in that, it wasn't about like, I care about what they think or I don't care about what they think. It was, I care about them and I care about me and I care about my mission. I care about my business. And I like to kind of put all the things I care about together, right? Like in high school, I would have friends from like all different friend groups. And like for my birthday parties, like I would invite all these people. And instead of worrying about, oh, but they don't even know each other, are they going to mesh and like all this stuff, I was just like, well, guess what? I'm the common denominator. So if they like me, they're probably going to like each other. So let me bring all this stuff together. And kind of in that similar fashion, I'm just like, okay, well, I do care about my parents. I do care about our relationship. And I do want them to kind of like just introduce them to what I do. Not from a place of, if they say something negative like that, it's going to just like totally trigger me and like make me not want to do my thing anymore. But to be able to give them that opportunity to love me, give them that opportunity to be proud of me, give them that opportunity to feel these ways about me that is actually about the authentic me, because I think they were still operating from a place of like what I had shown them. All right. And up to that point, like what I had shown them was basically this version of me who was like, I was crying at Thanksgiving last year because I was so in the weeds of things. Like I had just kind of understood that PMDD was hitting me again. And like I was just so depressed, so like in a terrible place. Like, these are the things that they were seeing. Like they were seeing me like crying, being angry, being reactive, just like not wanting to talk about my business. And what they were seeing was basically this internalized shame that I had that I hadn't processed. I was being triggered by them asking things about my business. And so obviously it was like, it clicked in my mind of like, okay, well, of course they would still be worried about me. Of course they would want me to do something else where like maybe I can create some more stability in, because what they're seeing from me is like, is not very happy, right? What they're seeing from me is somebody who's not very satisfied, not very successful, not very happy with themselves, which was kind of true, but also just like not fully true, right? That wasn't fully true. Like I really do enjoy what I do. I really do like believe in myself. I really do love like my mission, but they're just seeing like the downsides of it and then me being triggered by it. So that was again my like decision of like, let me show them me in my element, me really loving what I do, because that is the truth. There was definitely that piece of like, maybe if they see like how much this means to me or like how much I love this and how it really affects me, then they'll just like have a better understanding of their daughter, right? Of like who I really am now. Like I'm not this like teenager who was really depressed and suicidal and anxious in college. I'm not this person who just is anxious or depressed or whatever, right? I have stepped out of like girlhood and like dependency into like adulthood and creating like true independence for myself. And lo and behold, guess what, right? Like our thoughts create our feelings, create our actions, create our results, and that always is going to be shown in our environment. lo and behold, it was great. My dad told me he was really proud of me when after the Soul Whispers retreat, like before he left, he was just telling me like the space that we were in at Tia Shiloh and him seeing me like read tarot for people, him coming to this retreat and just seeing like the space that I curated and like the client who would come in, like him being able to see that, he was just like so proud of me. And I was just like, oh wow, like I really received that. But there was no like sense of relief, you know, there was no like, oh my gosh, validation, yay. If anything, it was really beautiful because it was so neutral for me, because I was already proud of myself. I was so proud of myself for just like hosting the retreat, something that I had been wanting to do for years in my business and just put off because I was afraid that nobody would come, or I was afraid of like putting the money in, or I was afraid of like all this stuff. But like me just like being able to be like, fuck it, like I'm gonna do it because I want to do it, and like I believe that people want this just as much as like why I want to create it. Like me being able to just like create from that place like made me so proud. And like obviously the things with that I've created in my business with Tia Shiloh or with Tara or with coaching, all these things, like all my offers, like I'm proud of myself. Like I did all this work to be able to elevate, right, my own self concept. I have all these like results that I've been with my clients. So like I have so many things that I'm allowed to be proud of, that I am allowed to own for myself. And him being able to say that was just such a great reflection point where I could really receive that with gratitude and with appreciation and with like love, instead of being reactionary and just being like, oh, I don't need you to say that because I'm proud of myself, right? That defensive attitude that I know like could come out sometimes, like not with my dad, but like in other areas of my life that I've seen. And also not from this place of like relief and validation of like, okay, okay, I'm safe now, like they get it, like I'm okay, like this is good. It was just neutral and I just got to receive it. With my mom, slightly different story. She I don't think she really understands like the idea of rest and being able to be still. It's just she has different values and that's okay. I definitely was got like a little hurt, you know, from some of the things that she said, but I think it really helped that my dad was there, my sister were there, because they were able to help shed light on a kind of industry that she doesn't understand. And because she knows that they know these things too, I think she was able to create a lot more like acceptance around me, around like the stuff that I was doing, because she trusts them. She trusts their judgment as well. Now, part of this whole cycle of being more vulnerable with my parents came with me wanting my parents to be more vulnerable with me. I bought this card game last year called Parents Are Human. And if you don't know what it is, it's a really cool company that was created by a child of immigrants who really wanted to create like better connection with his parents, but wasn't able to really like know how to do so because there's a language barrier. So he created this like conversation deck. And I love a good conversation deck. Like I've been using conversation decks since probably, I don't know, 2018, when I bought like the confessions game, and then I got like the icebreaker decks, like all these decks, and I just love it. I play it with my friends. That was kind of like my move too, like when I was dating, where I would pull out like these intense questions on like the first date or like second date, because I was like, I want to be able to be with somebody who can go this deep with me, right? Who's safe with me, who feels like they can just be vulnerable and like have these conversations. And so like that was kind of my move for a while, because I love the conversation deck so much, and I can see like the power of closeness and intimacy and truth that comes out from it. When I saw that this deck existed where it has questions in English and then questions in like Chinese, in Mandarin, and they have like all these other languages too. But because they had this like translation, I was like, okay, wait, this would be really cool for me and my family to play, because my Chinese is not very good. Like I can speak, I can understand to a degree, but it definitely is a little like awkward for me. And I know that it makes my parents a little happy when I practice my Chinese. I feel a little bit like self conscious when I do it around them. But I was like, this could be a fun way for all of us to kind of connect and be able to have this conversation. Now, I knew that my dad would play this, I knew my sister would play this. But I was like a little worried of whether or not my mom would. I was very concerned that my mom would just be like, this is BS, like this has like this is stupid, like what are we doing? Like I don't want to talk about any of this stuff. Like no, like don't ask me these questions. Because that's how she's responded in the past whenever I asked her anything about her childhood or growing up in China. She pretty much just never talked about her childhood unless it was like, growing up and going through puberty, and her just being like, "Oh, I was skinnier" or something when I was your age. Yeah, that's like the extent of which like I understood her past. So I don't want to say I blackmailed her, but I did slightly preface with like, oh, if you play this game with me, like with all of us at dinner, it will help me with my business. And because I know, again, my mom loves me, right? She just wants me to be successful, happy, secure, all the things. I think she's very willing to be able to be like, okay, fine. Like if it's for something, right? If it's for a utilitarian purpose, it's going to help you in some way. It's going to help you get ahead or something. Like if it's under that guise of like, it's a good investment in something, she will do it. Now, maybe she would have done it on her own anyways, just like for the story, like for our whole family. I would love to believe that. But I did preface it with that so I could get her to kind of play. And it went super well. We ended up playing for about like half an hour or so. Really, we only stopped because I had an event that I had to go to. But during that half hour, I learned so many things. I learned about my parents' favorite teacher. I learned about like what they really enjoyed growing up doing. Like my mom, she was really into swimming. Like she just loved swimming. And then she ended up having to stop because she needed to get contacts, and then she just wasn't able to like swim anymore, which I was just like, why didn't you just get goggles? But, her love for swimming, like that was really sweet to be able to learn from her. There was a question that was like, what teacher did you have growing up that really left an impression on you? And you know what my mom's answer was my dad. My parents, when they were in China and they were dating, my dad was a professor for like sports performance or like sports psychology. And my mom actually came into one of his classes to kind of sit in, and I was just like in my head I was like, wait, that's so cute. And like my dad was saying that like everybody knew too that like who she was, like to him. And I just think that that is actually like such a cute thing that I just would never have learned like otherwise. And it's just like, oh, wow, my parents are human. And, which is funny because that's the name of the game. But yeah, like they have so much more to this than you would know. She was telling me about how she like her happiest times were when she was with her grandparents. And I've always known that she was like really close with her grandma, but just to like kind of hear the way that she was talking about it and like see her face kind of light up when she talked about it, like that was so precious. Like I would have never had that moment otherwise. Overall, it was a really great experience, and I feel like it was such a great like almost closing ceremony for these cycles that I was mentioning in this video. And the last thing that I will note here of something that I'm letting go of, which is interesting, is letting go of the story that I'm breaking generational traumas, like that I'm like the first generation to break traumas. While I feel very strongly that like my sister and I are breaking these cycles of generational trauma that deal with emotional wounds, of psychological wounds, of being able to heal like through feeling the feelings that come up and being able to change our mindset and heart set. We are not the first generation to break traumas. That's actually my parents, because my parents were these huge risk takers who uprooted their entire life from China to come to the United States. My dad applied for his visa to come here 9 times before he actually got it. Like they almost gave up. They like literally were pregnant with my sister, and through the pregnancy was able to hear that they got this visa, right, to come to the country. And so she's like this lucky baby. And like they did it. They didn't give up. They almost gave up. And then once they were almost gave up, but they were like, oh, let me just try this one more time, they got it. And then they're here. Like they changed like the entire history and destiny for our family lineage. My dad becoming an entrepreneur too, like he got 3 master's degrees, got a good stable job and all the things, and then took this huge risk to be an entrepreneur with a few of his friends to build a company, and it paid off. It took a decade, okay, to pay off, but it paid off. And throughout that entire time, to think about what it really took for them to take those risks, to be able to believe in themselves, to be able to go through everything that they went through. They broke the cycles of poverty, like especially my dad's lineage. He broke that cycle, that generational cycle of poverty. And I think it's so powerful to know for me that I come from a lineage, not of just like generational trauma and pain and whatever, but generational cycle breakers in themselves, right? Like I come from a lineage of people who were big thinkers, big risk takers, people who had the courage to go after what it is they truly wanted and have the resourcefulness, the dedication, the drive, the grit to actually make it happen. That is my lineage. That is in my blood. And that is what I'm owning coming 2024 that I have been owning. Okay. But releasing now all the shitty stories that I hold all this pain and trauma, blah, 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 and all these wounds and like all this burden, but very much so the sentiment of I am my ancestors' wildest dreams come true, and my ancestors paid for the crown. I just get to wear it. So I think that really nicely wraps up the cycles that have everything to do with my family and my family's lineage that I'm releasing in this new year that I am coming into completion with. And before I end this episode, I do want to touch upon two more really great cycles that I've noticed that I'm also letting go of. Similar lines of relationships. I feel like the last few years, like it's very much so been about relationships, about releasing things in relationships, releasing expectations, certain desires, certain people in my life. And these two things revolve around releasing stories about anything related to disorganized attachment style and me having that, me experiencing it. I very much so am somebody who's like, I am a securely attached person who has these triggers of anxious and avoidant attachment styles, right? So you see the shift of like, I am in this baseline now, right? I'm in this camp of I have secure attachment style. I'm not like working on it. I'm not building towards it. I'm not healing disorganized attachment style. No, no, no. I am securely attached. And sometimes I notice that I might have these triggers, these tendencies, these symptoms of like an insecure attachment style. And me being able to shift into this way of being now means that whenever I get triggered, I know how to healthily respond to those tendencies, right? That is the beauty of it. Now, when it comes to something like healing and attachment style, I feel like there is this narrative that you're either born and have a childhood where you're securely attached or insecurely attached. And if you're securely attached, you're like one of the rare lucky ones and you just like don't have any problems. And then if you're insecurely attached, well, shit, you're like out of luck and you're going to spend your entire life now basically undoing those things and relearning things. What if, right, you can actually just be a securely attached person because you know that way of being. You've like maybe haven't experienced it yet, right? But you intellectually understand it. And all it is then you doing the work to make those behaviors, those thought patterns, those emotional habits so normal for you, so natural to you that now you just get to be a securely attached person. And let me tell you, it's not like the easiest thing. Okay, but what if it was that simple? What if it was as simple as you deciding that you're no longer somebody who's healing from anxious attachment style, who is trying to be more secure, who's trying to do all these things? What if, because you're aware of those things, because you know the strategies, because you've already like done the work, because you have the self-awareness, because you continue building towards it, right? Building your understanding of it and practicing it and all these things. What if because of that, that actually makes you a securely attached person? And instead of the core of it being you're insecurely attached and you're trying to build a secure attachment, what if the base is actually you are securely attached and sometimes you just have these waves right above the surface that show up like anxiousness, that show up like avoidant, right? But the ocean as a whole, right, is secure. That's the difference, right? That's the difference that I find so important to understand when it comes to any type of change that you're trying to make, especially when you're trying to elevate yourself or change like the way you are, embody a different lifestyle, call in a new way of being, is that you have to understand that you're the ocean and not the waves. You have to understand that the ocean itself, right, is somebody who is secure, who is confident, who is fully worthy, who is like able to tap into their divine feminine energy, their divine masculine energy, who's able to harmonize, who's intuitive, who is gifted, who is loved, right? All of these wonderful things, like that is the ocean. And on the waves, right, at the surface, there are the disappointments, the shame, the failures, the like trials, the errors, the blah, 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 blahs, the like life happenings. But that doesn't change the fact that it's the ocean. And there's this beautiful quote by Thich Nhat Hanh that said, enlightenment is when a wave realizes it is the ocean. And that, my friends, is exactly what you are. You are the whole ocean. And the last thing here that I am shedding, that I'm letting go of to invite in the new, is any stories, any beliefs that I have about me being a girl. I'm letting go of this narrative that I'm a girl, a girly, that I'm entering some type of like era, right? Where instead I'm actually a fully developed woman, right? And to be able to own that I am a woman. And that is something that I have definitely felt like really uncomfortable owning in the past, where I would kind of like cringe at, someone saying that I'm a woman. Like this would happen in the grocery store where a mom would be with her kid and they would refer to me as like that woman. And it would be something like, to like make sure that, they don't bother me or like they're not like in my way or whatever it was. It was never like a negative thing, but they would just refer to me as like a woman. And I'd be like, ew, like, ooh, ooh, like that makes me feel old. That makes me feel like weird. That makes me feel like little, ugh. Like I don't know what it was, but there was this like reactionary, like, no, like, I'm a woman. I mean, I'm a girl. I'm just a girly. And what that is a layer of immaturity that comes from a lack of conversation that we have in our society about what it really means to step into being a woman. Okay, we have these ceremonies that deal with us coming into adulthood. Whether you're Jewish and you have a bar mitzvah or bat mitzvah, whether you are American and have a sweet 16 and you get a car and you get your license and that means you're an adult, whether it's just like you're legal now, right? You're 18 and that means you're an adult and you go off to college. We have all these like little things that kind of show like, okay, you're coming into adulthood now, but we never really have many conversations about what it means to become a woman. And even for men, like to have a conversation about what it really means to be a man now. And especially in this day and age where we want to talk about modern masculinity, modern femininity, right? And make space for people who are also like non-binary, right? But we still have both energies that play within us, being able to fully own your identity. And I think with this rise of conversation in these spaces that I think is beautiful, where we can talk about people who are non-binary, people who are trans, and like what it really means to like be in those genders. At the same time, I feel like that has decreased the amount of conversation that we've had around what does it really mean to be a woman, to be a man, and to own that identity. If you're not questioning your gender, if you're not like fluid in that way, like what does it really mean for you to own that identity? It doesn't have to have anything to do with your sexual orientation, but to own what it is for you to be in your physical body, in your energy, in your feminine or masculine core essence. Like those are really important conversations, because what it is you're basically saying like, as a woman, as a man, like that is adult, right? That is you being adult, that is you being adept enough at this life, versus when you are a girl or you are a boy or you're a child, that is you being a child. That's you being in this identity that doesn't take responsibility for yourself, that doesn't understand your emotions, that gets these passes for acting out of alignment with yourself. Versus when you're an adult, there's this expectation, there's this understanding that you are capable, right? You're capable of understanding your emotions, you're capable of doing things, you're capable of being responsible for yourself, of taking on responsibility, of responding to things, of having needs and like meeting your own needs instead of relying on other people to meet your needs or expecting others to do that. And there are so many people who are age-wise adults in the society but act like children, right? Who expect their partners to like be everything to them and care for their emotions as well as their well-being, who put other people on a pedestal, who act as victims, who are wounded, like all this stuff. And I think what it really means for me, especially, to shed this identity of being a girl and stepping into womanhood, really got exemplified in the way that, for example, I approached my family coming to visit me, right? I'm seeing it come in ways of like dating as well, where me completing the cycle of being a girl means that I'm also, and like stepping into what it means to be a woman means that I'm not entertaining people casually. Like I've just never been one for really casual dating. Like it's never really worked that much for me. But at the time, right, I was also young and I was like, let me just experiment here. But now stepping into adulthood, like I am just like not entertaining things that I used to entertain. Things that used to be almost like a turn on. I'd be like, ooh, like they like me or whatever, is actually a turn off now. It's like a red flag now. For example, if somebody wants to like be intimate or like try to like make a move on me on like a first date and like kiss me, like that actually is like a turn off now. you know? And I think before I was just like, ooh, like you're just going with the flow of emotions and all the things and like you're just like in it. But now with like this mature understanding of love, this mature understanding of myself, of my body, of like what actually makes me feel safe and secure in a relationship and developing a relationship with somebody, of getting to know somebody in these early stages of dating, what it means for me to like take care of my emotional well-being and put that in the priority of staying grounded and being able to really look at like, who is this person and do I want to engage with them like in this way? Do I see them in my life? You know, being very intentional with my intimacy, with who I spend my time with. Like there's this maturity that comes with me stepping into womanhood and looking for a man, looking for a partner, right? A life partner to share that with. I'm not looking for these like tendencies or these patterns or little things that kind of like just catch the eye. I'm not looking for these opulences essentially and like quick like feelings of like validation or whatever. Like I really value consistency of this respect that comes from like the get-go of a relationship, and like those are the things that really like magnetize me to people now. Like those are the things that I'm looking at now, because me as a woman coming into it, I am understanding my needs, my value, my power, my like the power of my own presence in a relationship, that if that feels like disrespected or not understood or whatever, because somebody else is operating from a boyish paradigm or an emotionally unintelligent one, whatever it is, it then translates to me as like, oh, this is not for me. And me being able to really shift into and through this identity of being a woman and what that means for me has been incredibly powerful, which is why I also wanted to create a masterclass to have more of these conversations and to talk about how to heal these wounds that we carry as women, right? Of the wounded feminine, of the distorted feminine, of feeling like we need to compete with a man, and these like distorted views of like what womanhood looks like too as well, and bring kind of the soul back to it, right? Bring soul back into the conversation of gender, of sexuality, of identity, instead of just looking at it from a political lens nowadays, right? But really look at the essence of it and understanding that we all share like the same energy, and it's just how does it want to express through us and what really feels aligned as like our true self to be with. And so I created a 3-day masterclass called Healing the Feminine, which is all about how to reclaim your feminine energy, reclaim your power as a woman. And me recording this right now, the masterclass hasn't happened yet, but by the time it's released, it would have already happened. And I already know that it's going to be an incredibly powerful class. It's going to be incredibly healing, validating, and empowering for women to be in these conversations, to be able to look at themselves, take responsibility for their own cycles, and be able to release them with love and not with like guilt or shame or anything like that, or inadequacy, and really start to build up their self-concept of what does it mean for you to be a woman, right? What does it mean for you to embody this divine feminine energy? What does it mean, and how does it feel to really see that light within you, to feel like the goddess that you are within you? And I don't say that in like a fun little like, oh yeah, you're a goddess, but like truly that we have this divine essence within us because we are born from the stars. We literally are made of stardust, right? That we have this cosmic energy, this natural feminine intuition that lives within us. And even if you're a man, you have this, right? But this is really geared for women and people who identify as women. Like we have this divine feminine intuition, this gift, this depth of feeling that lives within us. And what does it really look like to feel connected to that and feel empowered to use it to walk through this life with that knowing? This class is the place to start when you want to start exploring your own womanhood, when you want to enter your soft girl era or your villain era. And before you do that, right, be able to approach it from this lens of being able to own your own feminine power and not have this distortion of coming at it from like the soft girl era, like, you know, having resistance to it because you're still in this competing energy with a man, right? Or from this wounded place of like, you don't think that you can create what it is that you want, so you want a man to take care of you, right? Or if you're wanting to go into your villain era, kind of like this understanding that you don't need to compete with a man, and you know, you going into your villain era where you're kind of being just like an ice queen to everybody, like that's not how to do it either. But you're also not doing it from a disempowered place where you feel like, you know, you can't find anybody else, and so therefore you just have to be this like boss bitch energy, right? This villain, because you just can't have what it is that you want. Like when you really step into the divine feminine energy and embody that, you understand that you have the power always. So if you're ready to start healing your feminine, you can go down to the description box below and click on the link to start watching the Healing the Feminine 3-day masterclass. Also, at this time, if you are a man and you want to learn how to tap into your divine masculine energy, we just finished up the 3-day masterclass, Healing the Masculine. And this is a class for you if you want to build up confidence and focus in your own abilities as a man, tap into your power to fulfill your purpose, as well as create a loving partnership for yourself. With that, friends, I hope that you've had an incredible January. I'm so looking forward to February. And thank you all for being here today. Until next time, stay well.